Okay, so you wanted to hear the full story on Ronald James Ward.
Yeah.
And wow, you weren't kidding about this being a complex one.
Right.
The sources you sent, they paint a pretty disturbing picture, but then there are these moments,
Hmm.
these flashes of something else,
Yeah.
almost normal.
I know.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle where like half the pieces just don't belong.
That's what makes these types of cases so fascinating.
Right.
We want to make sense of things that just don't make sense.
Yeah.
We look for patterns. We look for explanations. Anything that can help us understand how someone can commit these really horrific acts and still have moments that seem,
Yeah.
well, human.
Right. Because if we can understand it,
Right.
then maybe we can stop it from happening again.
Exactly.
So let's start unpacking this puzzle with Ward's early life.
Okay.
He was born in Oregon in 1966,
Right.
but it sounds like his childhood was anything but stable.
Yeah.
8 stepmothers.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
That's a lot of stepmother.
And a father who's described as abusive,
Mm-hmm.
a womanizer. At one point, he even infected Ward's own mother with syphilis.
Oh my gosh.
It's hard to fathom a more dysfunctional environment.
No kidding.
It's no surprise that a background like that can leave scars.
Absolutely.
Psychologists, I think they use the term adverse childhood experiences or
Yeah.
ACEs to describe these kinds of traumatic events.
Wow.
And studies have shown that there's a strong connection between like high ACE scores and a whole range of negative outcomes later in life,
Yes.
including criminal behavior.
Yeah.
So we're talking about more than just a rough childhood.
Oh, yeah.
This is deep-rooted trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma that can actually change the way a person's brain develops.
Absolutely.
And in Ward's case, with that level of instability
Yeah.
and abuse, you really see how that might have played a role.
For sure.
Imagine growing up and never knowing who your mother figure would be,
Right.
constantly being exposed to your father's toxic behavior.
Yeah. It creates a sense of chaos, like a lack of safety and security that's essential for healthy development.
Right.
It can disrupt the development of empathy,
Yeah.
impulse control, the ability to form healthy relationships.
And to top it off, Ward dropped out of school in the 6th grade.
Wow.
You have to wonder, was he already showing signs of trouble?
Yeah.
Or was this a turning point where he just gave up on like the traditional path?
It's hard to say for sure without more information,
Yeah.
but it's likely a combination of factors, right?
Yeah.
His home environment,
Huh.
his own internal struggles, maybe even undiagnosed learning disabilities or mental health issues.
Right.
Whatever the reason, dropping out of school that young
Yeah.
makes you even more vulnerable,
Yeah.
less equipped to cope with the challenges that life throws at you.
And that seems to be the pattern here.
Yeah.
Like a series of just difficult circumstances piling up on each other.
Right.
But here's where it gets even more perplexing.
Okay.
Despite this really traumatic upbringing, there were moments in Ward's life where he showed genuine care and responsibility.
Really?
At 19, he married a woman named Donna,
Okay.
who already had 6 children from her previous relationship. He became a devoted stepfather, taking them on outings, being the father figure he never had.
That's interesting.
He even coached football for 7th and 8th graders in Coos Bay.
Okay.
It seems like he was capable of genuine affection,
Yeah.
of building these positive relationships.
That's the paradox we're grappling with here.
Right.
On the one hand, you have these horrific crimes, the undeniable brutality
Yeah.
that points to a deeply disturbed individual.
Yeah.
But then you have these glimpses of something else, a capacity for love and connection
Right.
that seems completely at odds with the monster we know he became.
It's almost like he was leading this double life. Like
Yeah.
there were 2 Ronald Wards, the
Oh.
caring stepfather and coach,
Right.
and then this dark, violent side that was lurking beneath the surface, just waiting for the right moment to emerge. But what was the trigger?
Yeah.
What tips the scales?
Well, the sources you provided point to drug addiction as a major factor in his downfall.
Okay.
He started using heavily, and it quickly spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
He bounced from job to job, truck driving, construction, even commercial fishing in Alaska.
Huh.
It's like he was searching for something, trying to outrun his demons,
Yeah.
but the drugs kept pulling him back down.
Addiction is often a symptom of deeper issues, right? Like
Yeah.
a way to numb the pain, escape from reality.
Exactly.
What do you think he was running from?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Was he trying to suppress the trauma of his childhood?
Mm.
Was there some other underlying mental health issue that was fueling his addiction?
Yeah.
Or was it a combination of factors, a
Yeah.
perfect storm of circumstances that pushed him towards that dark path?
Right.
We may never know for sure.
And that brings us to the year 2000,
Okay.
a pivotal year for Ward and the beginning of a horrifying chapter.
Yeah. This is where Ward's story takes a really dark turn.
Yeah.
Between August and December of 2000, he committed at least 4 murders.
Wow.
And it's chilling to think there might be even more.
You mentioned earlier that there's often a pattern with serial killers, like a specific way they operate.
Yeah.
What did investigators find with Ward?
Well, the sources you provided, they detail a recurring modus operandi. His victims were often vulnerable women, sometimes involved in sex work or struggling with homelessness.
Right.
He would use a combination of beating, strangulation, sexual assault,
Yeah.
sometimes stabbing.
Jeez.
There's a clear sense of rage and a need to exert power and control.
It's disturbing how those patterns emerge.
I know.
Almost like a signature, a dark reflection of their inner turmoil.
It is.
So let's delve into the victims you've highlighted in the sources.
Okay.
First, there's Kristen Lorite,
Yeah.
a 25-year-old from New Jersey, who was driving across the country for a fresh start, a new job at a daycare in California.
Right.
What happened to her?
This case is particularly heartbreaking. In August of 2000, Lorite stopped at a secluded rest stop off Interstate 40 in Arkansas.
Okay.
Picture this. She just wanted to freshen up, let her 2 dogs run around by the pond.
Oh, wow.
And tragically, that's where Ward found her.
It's almost too awful to imagine.
He beat her, strangled her, raped her before stabbing her multiple times in the neck.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a chilling detail from the sources. But Lorite's dogs actually led authorities to her body.
Oh, wow. So you mentioned earlier that Ward claimed to be a nonviolent person.
Yeah.
How does that square with the brutality of a crime like this?
Well, it's a classic manipulation tactic used by serial killers.
Really?
They often try to deflect blame, downplay their actions, or create a narrative that makes them seem less monstrous.
Right.
But as FBI profiler Johnny Douglas has pointed out, these are often carefully constructed facades.
So even when they confess, they're still playing mind games.
They're very good at it.
That's chilling. What else did Douglas have to say about Ward?
Well, Douglas dismissed Ward's claims of nonviolence outright.
Okay.
He saw through the act. He recognized the patterns, the brutality, and the escalation of violence that so often mark a serial killer.
Okay, so we have Kristen Lorite, who was his next victim.
His next confirmed victim was Craig Petrich,
Oh.
a 43-year-old man Ward met in Montana.
All right.
At the time, Ward was living in an RV park with his girlfriend, Hattie Ann Baker.
Okay.
He claimed that Petrich assaulted Baker and that he shot him in a fit of rage.
But investigators weren't buying that story.
No, they believed that the 2 men got into a fight and Ward ended up beating Petrich with a rock and shooting him 3 times in the chest.
Oh, geez.
Then he hid the body in a rock crevice in the Sapphire Mountains.
It seems like rage played a big part in Ward's crimes.
Yeah.
This impulsivity, maybe fueled by drugs and his own internal demons, explodes into violence.
Yeah.
But he also seemed to be able to cover his tracks, at least for a while.
For a while, yeah. That's right. He fled Montana with Baker shortly after Petrich's murder.
Yeah.
But as we know, his spree didn't end there.
Right.
He turned up in California, where it's believed he killed 2 more women, Jackie Travis and Shayla Pauley.
Let's talk about Jackie Travis.
Okay.
What do the sources tell us about her?
Well, Jackie was a 49-year-old woman from Arkansas who had recently moved to Merced, California. She had had a difficult life, losing a leg in a car accident and experiencing homelessness for a period. It's believed Ward knew her from a homeless shelter.
Okay.
In December of 2000, she was found murdered in her apartment. The level of brutality in this case is truly horrifying.
Really?
She was beaten, raped, strangled, carved on, burned, and stabbed.
It's almost like he was trying to obliterate her entirely.
It is. And then there's Sheila Pauley, a 32-year-old homeless woman with 3 children. What can you tell us about her case?
Sheila was studying to become a nursing assistant and splitting custody of her children with her ex-husband in December of 2000. Her body was found dumped in Dry Creek in Modesto, California. She had been beaten, stabbed, and sexually assaulted.
Right.
Witnesses reported seeing her with Ward before her disappearance. That's right.
So we have 4 victims,
Yeah.
all brutally murdered,
Uh-huh.
and a clear pattern of violence.
Right.
What finally led to Ward's capture?
Well, 3 months after fleeing Montana, he was arrested in Merced, California, in connection with Sheila Pauley's murder.
Okay.
He was extradited back to Montana and confessed to killing Craig Petrich. However, at that point, they didn't have enough evidence to tie him to the other murders.
So how did they finally connect him to Kristen Lorite's murder?
It wasn't until 2007, 7 years later, that DNA evidence linked him to Lorite's murder.
Wow.
Remember, this was before DNA technology was as advanced or as widely used as it is today.
Right.
It took years of investigation and advancements in forensic science to finally connect the dots.
It's amazing how crucial DNA evidence has become in solving cold cases.
It is.
It brings a sense of justice, maybe even a bit of closure for families who've been waiting for answers.
Yeah.
I imagine Lorraine's family felt some relief when they finally knew who was responsible. Absolutely. It's a powerful tool for law enforcement, but it's also a stark reminder of the ripple effect of these crimes. The impact goes far beyond the immediate victims, reaching into communities, families, and even across generations.
So what happened once Ward was linked to Lurie's murder?
He was extradited to Arkansas, where he pleaded no contest to the murder.
Ah.
It's a curious detail from the sources. He claimed he had no memory of killing her, but accepted guilt based on the DNA evidence.
It's hard to grasp how someone could commit such a brutal act and then claim to have no memory of it.
Well, it's a psychological defense mechanism that we sometimes see with offenders. It's a way to cope with the enormity of their crimes.
Right.
It's possible that his mind was, in a way, protecting itself from the horror of what he had done.
It's a disturbing thought, but it makes sense.
It does.
And of course, that same DNA evidence also connected him to the murders of Jackie Travis and Sheila Pauley in California.
Right.
So, Ronald James Ward, a man capable of both kindness and an unimaginable cruelty, was finally behind bars, convicted of multiple murders. But as you hinted earlier, his story doesn't end there, does it? So Ward is in prison, convicted of these horrible murders. You'd think that would be the end of the story. But the sources mention that both John Douglas, the FBI profiler, and Detective Ray Sterling, who worked the case, believe there could be more victims.
It's a chilling thought, but given Ward's transient lifestyle and his history of violence, it's a very real possibility. The fact that he was conclusively linked to these 4 murders through DNA evidence raises the question, what about the time periods where his whereabouts are unaccounted for?
Exactly.
Could there be other cases, other families out there?
Yeah.
Still searching for answers, not even knowing that the person responsible is already behind bars.
That's heartbreaking. It really underscores how crucial DNA technology has become in solving these cold cases.
Absolutely.
What's particularly striking is that Ward was living this double life, capable of kindness in one moment and horrific violence in the next.
It's a strange dichotomy.
Did Douglas offer any insights into that duality?
What's fascinating is that despite the evidence, despite his confessions, Ward continued to present himself as a nonviolent person.
Really?
He attempted to minimize his actions and shift blame to external factors, but Douglas saw right through that facade.
So even after everything, he was still manipulating, still trying to control the narrative?
It seems that way.
That's a chilling thought. It makes you wonder what was really going on inside his head.
Well, Douglas has spent his career studying the minds of serial killers, and he's seen this pattern time and again.
Yeah.
The deflection, the minimization, the carefully crafted persona that hides the darkness within.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew about human nature.
It does.
How could someone capable of such horrific violence also be a devoted stepfather, a caring football coach?
Right.
It's hard to reconcile those two sides of the same person.
Yeah. That's the complexity we're left with. And it's a question that continues to fascinate and frustrate criminologists, psychologists, and anyone who seeks to understand the darkest corners of the human mind.
So what ultimately became of Ronald James Ward? Did he ever express remorse for his crimes?
In 2014, Ward was found unresponsive in his cell at the Montana State Prison.
Oh, wow.
He was pronounced dead at the hospital at the age of 47.
Okay.
The cause of death was never publicly disclosed, but authorities said there was no foul play suspected.
Okay.
Whether he ever truly grappled with the magnitude of his actions, whether he felt any genuine remorse, we'll never know.
It's a strange ending to a truly disturbing story.
It is.
No dramatic courtroom showdown, no final confession, just silence.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like there's much closure for the families of his victims.
And that's the tragedy of these cases, even with a conviction, even with the perpetrator gone.
Right.
The scars remain. The families are left to grapple with the loss, the pain, and the unanswered questions that haunt them forever.
This deep dive into the life and crimes of Ronald James Ward has been unsettling, but also incredibly eye-opening. It's a stark reminder of the complexities of human nature, the darkness that can reside within seemingly ordinary individuals, and the importance of seeking justice for victims of violence. But it also leaves us with a profound sense of unease.
Yeah.
The thought that there might be other victims out there, that the true extent of Ward's crimes may never be known, is a chilling reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved.
It's a reminder that we must remain vigilant, that we must continue to support the work of law enforcement and forensic science, and that we must never stop seeking answers, even in the face of the most disturbing truths.
And that concludes our deep dive into the case of Ronald James Ward. We hope this exploration has been insightful, thought-provoking, and perhaps even a little bit unsettling. It's a story that stays with you long after the details fade, a reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly ordinary lives. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Thanks for listening.